There is so much information in your chart that can help you on a granular day-to-day level to feel better, to tap into your strengths, to make life feel easier or aligned or make more sense.
Welcome to the Aligned and Magnetic podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Ashley, intuitive business coach certified by the International Coaching Federation, and they call me the money mindset and manifestation queen. I take a spiritual and practical approach that's backed by neuroscience to help you make your vision a reality, but more importantly, doing it in a way that lights you the fuck up. If you're ready to create an aligned, magnetic, and profitable business so you can live a life and do the work you are absolutely in love with, you're in the right place. Get ready to hear the powerful questions and raw lessons that you need to create success your way. Thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. Hi, loves. Welcome back to another episode of the Aligned and Magnetic podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, Jennifer from Ocean and Oracle. So Jennifer is an astrologer and clinical hypnotherapist with over 10 years of experience in her field, using the power and knowledge of astrology paired with rewiring the subconscious mind. She assists her clients to catapult forward into a life that they love. Jennifer supports clients all over the world and is beyond passionate about helping them reach their desired goals and then some. And so Jen also has her own podcast called the Ocean and Oracle podcast. You have to go check that out because you talk about all things astrology, all things like the mind and all of that stuff as well, right? It's amazing. And you may have also heard another interview. We interviewed you like 2 years ago, I think, on the podcast in season 1, which is wild to think back, like 2 years already has passed. So that's crazy. So today we're going to be talking mostly about astrology. So welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to dive in. My
Thank you.
first question is, what is the biggest misconception that you see or are aware of when it comes to astrology?
Where to start with this question?
There's probably like
I
10 or more.
This episode will be 10 hours. The biggest thing is I feel like astrology gets discredited a lot as the horoscope in an inaccurate horoscope in the back of a magazine. And although astrology can absolutely be used for entertainment purposes, and I'm the first one to laugh at memes that are up on whatever social platform, especially the Taurus ones. I'm a Taurus, and all the memes that come up for Taurus are like napping with pizza, and I can't even feel attacked because, like, that's what we are, we love it. But there is so much information in your chart that can help you on a granular day-to-day level to feel better, to tap into your strengths, to make life feel easier or aligned or make more sense. And it has been something, if you follow me on any of my platforms, you will know that my approach to this is very practical. And having said that, it has made such an impact on my life as someone who has struggled with anxiety, depression, overthinking, self sabotage, all of it. My chart was a huge part of what helped me move out of that. Not only move out of that, but understand why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. And I was actually misdiagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And this is probably about like, oh my God, 8 to 10 years ago, I'll say. And I'm not saying that anxiety disorders are not very real because I also work within mental health and I know that they are. But for me, it wasn't actually anxiety. It was overthinking, and it was part of my chart that helped me kind of, I want to just say, like, unravel why I do that. Because when you go into Western medicine and you list off how you're feeling, and the doctor basically just went like, tick, tick, tick. Yep, anxiety, here's your medication. And I was on some pretty heavy stuff twice a day. that made me just I felt nothing. I was just like, I don't even know how to explain it, like a zombie. And coming off of those meds because I didn't need them, I feel like my life completely changed and I was able to be the person that I meant to be. I feel like that was like a really, well, I mean, this is what we do. We go down rabbit holes when you and I talk, but does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Would you mind sharing, and you don't have to, but would you mind sharing what specifically in your chart led to overthinking?
Yeah. So the chart is broken down into different planets or points. So we have personality planets, which are Mercury, Venus, the sun and the moon are in there, although they're luminaries, not planets. We have growth planets that show us, and I just got goosebumps as I said that, but we have growth planets, which are in our chart to show us significant areas of opportunity of growth in this life. And then we have subconscious planets, which are the subconscious. They are the layers underneath. And for me, they're all clustered in a certain part of my chart, which has to do with me internally and understanding why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, that it helped me. All I can say is like a giant, I'm just picturing like a giant ball of yarn. And you know, like when you have anything that's super tangled and you're trying to just pull it and it just gets tighter, or even like a knot in a necklace. And it just helped me unravel all of that because there's no bad placements in a chart. Some placements are in a place of strength, and we just come into this life not really having to do much unlearning with them. But some planets are placed in a part of our chart where we are meant to grow and learn with them. And I've been saying this a lot lately. So I feel like this is not just for me, but for other people too. But it was a lot of unlearning and almost freeing myself from myself because the anxiety for me stemmed from overthinking and building up scenarios that weren't happening and then living through that lens,
Yeah.
which can feel really debilitating.
Hmm.
So it was validating to understand why I was feeling that way. And then learning how to tap into my areas of strength and work with those areas that needed a little bit of support to help come out the other end essentially and not live in that space of worst case scenario, overthinking,
Mhm.
all of that.
It's so interesting because I love your metaphor of the ball of yarn, right? And I think what I'm gathering from this is like every human being, there's obviously a reason that anxiety exists, right? Like it is real. And also, I guess what I think I'm understanding is that astrology really helped you to direct your attention to what the root of it was, or like where you could
Yeah.
maybe shift your perspective and grow and expand. And I think
Yep.
that, from what I know about astrology, is going to be different for every human being, right? Yeah.
Yes. And that's probably another misconception, honestly, is the generic.
Mm. Zodiac sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our charts are so intricate. I had one of the clients that I had this week was like, this is why I'm happy to pay you to do this because this is so overwhelming. I had no idea that there was this many layers. And with that, if you're not a professional astrologer or you have not devoted time to learning, it's like anything else. You don't just wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm just going to go into surgery today because I looked it up on the internet. So don't feel overwhelmed that you don't know everything because you're not meant to know everything unless you've studied it or learned it. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. And that just reminds me of what we started talking about before we hit the record button, which was that someone came to and was like, oh, I just used Chat GPT for astrology. What are your thoughts on that? As you cringe.
Wish you could see my face. I've used ChatGPT because I was curious as AI and this stuff is all coming to the forefront. I just wanted to see what it could do. And because I know what's accurate and what's not accurate, some of the stuff that came up did hit. And I was like, okay, but some of it was wildly inaccurate from what I know to be true. And I've been talking about this a lot on my platform how astrology isn't regulated. It's a modality that's not regulated, meaning anyone can say anything that they want. And this is why it's so important because our minds are so powerful. So if you're reading something that says whatever it says and that sticks in your mind, just how we have the ability, and I mean preaching to the choir with you, but just as we have the ability to manifest positivity into our lives, we can also manifest negativity. So if you're reading something that's not inaccurate or and absorbing that, well, that's getting in the way of your magnetism and what you can bring into your life. And on the other side of that is I've had a lot of clients who've read like generic horoscopes. I'll use one specific example where they are like, oh, last month it said that Pisces was supposed to find love and I didn't. What am I doing wrong? So then you get into the area where if you are reading things that are promising things that may or may not be accurate to you, and you're holding out for that and they're not happening because they were never accurate from the beginning, well, how does that leave you feeling? Not really good.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger and I didn't know anything about astrology and I would read the magazines. I would always go and get, I can't even remember what magazines, but I would read those teen people magazines and
Cosmo,
whatever. Yes, Cosmopolitan. And then what are the other ones? Oh my God, I
like
forget now.
17.
Yes, I read that one. Oh my God, I forget all of them, but anyway, so I would read my horoscope in there and I would feel disappointed because I would get so much hope for what my future was about to bring and the love of my life was going to come in and enter and whatever. And then, yeah, you get to the end of the month and you're kind of like, huh, that kind of sucks. But now what I know about astrology, and it's funny because when I started university, all of my professors in psychology, because I did my undergrad in psych, they were like, in first year psychology, they were like, astrology isn't real. It's blah, 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 blah. But psychology is real. I'm like, oh, okay. So I bought into that idea. But then as I just started learning about, I got credentialed as a coach and did that, and then had a huge spiritual journey in Mexico. I started to realize that, well, actually, there's so many ancient, what would you call it? Like the Mayans used astrology, like all of these native groups. I'm not saying the right thing, but in ancient times, they used astrology to plan different things, to do different things, and all of that. So it just validated the modality. And now I look at those horoscopes and everything, and I'm like, how the heck can they even say something as bold as a Pisces is going to find love? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, how did you draw that conclusion? Because it's such a complex tool.
And that's why I refuse to do it.
Yeah.
I look at a lot of these other astrology accounts that have larger followings than me, and a lot of them are doing generic horoscopes
Mhm.
per se. And I take such a pride in not, to the best of my ability, spreading misinformation or false promises. Could I have a larger following if I did that because it's clickbait? Absolutely, but I can't.
Mhm. And I love that you stand in your integrity. You actually mentioned something recently when we were chatting about the Lionsgate and how you challenged that. Do you want to talk about that?
And got absolutely attacked. Yeah, I would love to. So, firstly, this is not from a numerology standpoint. I'm not a numerologist. It is not my area of expertise. So I'm not saying that there could not be some validity from that from a numbers standpoint. I don't know. Ask a numerologist. But the Lionsgate portal has to do with the sun in Leo and Sirius, which is a star, and an alignment. So, my question with this, when I saw this Lionsgate stuff coming up, was I just saw a blue jay fly outside the window, and I
Oh
never
my
see blue jays. So
God.
I feel like that was some sort of like stay true to you.
Yeah.
But it was just why this alignment? Why this specific one? And I know that Sirius is the brightest star in the sky, like there is that, but why this specific one? And it was something years ago that I asked my teacher because she's very traditional. And I said, "You've never taught this. Why is everyone talking about it?" She said the same thing. It's an alignment. If we noted every alignment that happened between a luminary or a planet or a star, we'd have every day. So why this one? And when I started to do some research around it, there isn't really anything that dates back. I don't remember exactly how many years, but not a lot. And it never resonated. So for years, I never said anything. And this year, I just thought, you know what? I'm going to say, as a professional astrologer, I do not see the validity in this. However, I am not here to tell you what is right for you, but you know, I always keep it real with y'all. And this is my opinion. Take it, leave it, stay true to you. And oh my God, did I get attacked? And it makes me laugh because I mean, I already know you're never going to please everyone. And I knew posting that up because it's an opinion, I was probably going to get some kind of backlash. And you kind of have to have thick skin to post anything these days that is of an opinion because there's people that will see it and if it doesn't resonate, just leave it. And then there's the people, and I feel like these are a lot of times the people that are not strong within themselves, or perhaps living from a victim mentality that do feel the need to attack you for your opinion when you are not attacking anybody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing this story because I've even been going through it. I actually posted a podcast episode on this recently, or maybe it's the one coming out anyway, about cancel culture. And my clients are afraid to put anything out there because people are so quick to cancel without any context, without any understanding of who you are. Like they'll just see something and they'll be like, no, you suck, blah, blah, blah. I disagree with you. And it's really sad to me to see how much hatred and division and judgment there is in the world. Like it really does hurt my heart. And also it's scary because that is like, it hurts. I'm not someone who likes confrontation. So whenever someone has like something bad to say about something or like whatever, I feel it in my body. And so it's obviously that's something that we can work on and to get a stronger and thicker skin, but it's challenging. It's a challenging thing to face, I think, right now in the online world.
And not to like get really deep here, but there are certain things that I will, I mean, pick and choosing my battles because I'm not going
Yeah,
to drop my energy on deaf ears, but there's certain things that I do think there's a line with right and wrong.
absolutely.
You know, racism, I will say
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yes.
Homophobia, I will say something because this is human rights,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but someone wants to post something on the internet that says
I don't believe
astrology
in
is
the
bullshit.
Lionsgate. Yeah, right.
Amazing. I'm so
Yeah.
happy for you. Whatever works for you, that's great. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
here trying to argue and change their mind,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but
No, it's gone beyond just like standing up for ethical things. It's like personal attacks. And anyway, we could have a whole other conversation, but I wanted to mention I Googled the meaning of a blue jay and it's strength, confidence, and communication. So I thought that was very
there
relevant.
you go.
Okay, so what difference has astrology made in your life? I feel like you've kind of touched on this, but feel free to share more or to share maybe like the biggest, I don't know, the biggest thing that you've seen astrology do for you.
I think for me right now, because I don't think there's like a simple way to answer this question because there's so many things. But if I had to pick one right now, this isn't my natal chart. So this isn't me looking at like my specific birth chart. It's a transit that is happening within my birth chart. And just to explain a little bit what I mean by transit, so we all have our natal birth chart, which is a snapshot of the sky the moment we took our first breath, which is like our life handbook. But obviously, the planets and the points aren't just stuck there, they're still moving. So they move around your chart, creating conversations with the other planets or points, giving you areas of growth or opportunity. And for anyone who has followed along on my journey, or if you're new to me, I am Canadian. I've lived mostly in New Zealand for the last 5 years. I did spend some time in California, spend some time in Fiji. I am about to embark, oh my God, like a week and a half, I think, now on a journey to Asia, to Bali. I have a one-way ticket. And as a tourist, this is not easy for me. Just disclaimer. I am like a stability plan type person. So for me to get like a one-way ticket and be like, we're just going to figure it out, like this is growth within myself. But because I've been moving around so much and I've really been wanting to figure out where I'm meant to be, just to kind of have a home base, stop living out of suitcases. At this point, I have stuff in 3 different countries that I've just left because I've accumulated and can't keep bringing it with me. So I go back and basically have a life there of things already. And I have a transit that is going over a part of my chart, and it's a longer transit. Some transits move very quickly, some take years. So I have a transit, I'm coming out of it now, and it's been 4.5 years, and it's going over a part of my chart that has to do with home and where I belong. And I think that this would have been very hard for me to not understand why and this is the internal dialogue that I've had sometimes, why I can't accomplish a simple task of finding roots. But knowing that this transit has me moving, and whether that be because I haven't figured out where I'm meant to be long term yet, or there is someone that I am meant to meet along this journey, and then I will land somewhere. It helped me lean into not worrying. And I'm not saying I still don't want that, or I'm not putting the energy out that I am going to find my home base and I will still travel because that's a huge part of who I am. But it's helped me to not stress out about it and feel, I don't want to just say like shitty about it, because if it's something that you can't figure out and it weighs on you, I know we've all had these types of scenarios where we want something so bad and it's not happening and it's all you can think of. It's just helped me lean in and enjoy the moment and be okay with purchasing a one-way ticket to Bali with no plan. Basically, I'm landing, that's my plan, and know that everything's going to be okay, everything's going to unfold. And instead of looking at it through the lens of fear, looking at it through the lens of opportunity.
Yeah.
Because if I haven't found that home base yet, I kind of have a funny feeling of where it is, and I've already been there, but I'm not going to spoil everything. We'll unravel that to you as it comes. But it's just helped me enjoy being where I am and not worrying about step 9, 10, and 11 when I'm on step one, you know?
Yeah, it sounds to me like it helps to let go of like the rumination and the self-criticism around, and I go through that all the time, right? Like I remember before discovering human design, for me, I was like, I'm trying all of these fucking business strategies. I've been doing this for 2 years. Why isn't this working? And it helps to give you, I think, that validation of like, you're not maybe meant to do those strategies, or you're meant to be this way, or you're meant to, I don't know, shine your light like this. And this is who you are. It's like a remembrance of who you are. So you can stop banging your head against the wall and trying to fit into the same box that society tries to put people in?
Totally. And from a business standpoint, through my chart, I have been able to identify business cycles.
Mm.
So before this, there would be times where I would be so busy with minimal effort. And when I say minimal effort, I mean I've already had my business fundamentals and what's the word I want to use? Like foundation in
Yeah.
place, but I haven't had to do much selling.
Yeah.
And then there are times where I go through these lulls. And before I understood this, I mean, Lauren Ashley and I have had conversations where I haven't said it in these words, but just like, I'm burning it all to the ground. It's not working. And it's just helped me understand that my business is going to come in these ebbs and flows. And
Yeah.
if it is a time that is in a lower time, that's my time to rest,
Mm-hmm.
not my time to burn out trying to like force a circle into a square. So,
Yeah.
from a business standpoint, that's helped a lot too to
And then you can
understand that.
also, yeah, then you can plan for that rest too, right? Like you can plan for, maybe you could expect yourself to not do as much as you were doing before because financially your things look a little bit different. And I think this is so important to understand. And I just want to highlight because with all of the marketing that is done online, and this is something that I constantly have to face myself. There's so much marketing around creating consistent this much months, creating consistent this much months. And I've been able to do that. And still, there are still ebbs and flows. Like, I don't know that any business can, there's always going to be moments where, 1 month it's really, really good. One launch is really amazing. And then maybe things shift, right? And that's kind of part of business. And I think it can get easier as you go on. But I just know that so many people struggle with this narrative because they're like 2 years into their business and they're like, well, I haven't made consistent money yet. And it's like, well, I think when we build a business that's so like we are the center of it, we do a lot. We do the marketing, we do the service providing, we do the everything. It's challenging to still do all of those things when you're in a low moment. And I have those low moments every year. I deal with that. So I think the more that we can understand our cycles and understand these transits and understand when maybe things will flow more easily and when we maybe need to sit back and relax or have something else in place, the better we can make decisions around our business and what we decide to promote or whatever that is. So yeah.
Totally. And for anyone else, because astrology is one facet of my business, but I also work
Mm-hmm.
with mental health. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and I cannot do my job if I am not in my top mental, physical, emotional, spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And my chart has helped me do this. Of course,
Yeah.
I still have moments where I need to do self care for myself because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
human, but I can't do my job if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not also doing work on myself. So, for anyone who's and doesn't have to be dealing with mental health specifically, even a healer or any type of job that requires you to have strong mental agility,
Yeah.
um, right? It helps. It
Yeah.
helps you be the best version that you can be.
I would say mental agility, but also like awareness, right? Because you could be mentally strong and just blocking your emotions and blocking like all of the stuff, but it is holistic. And we do, as people who are healers, coaches, like therapists, anyone in this industry, it's not an easy industry to be in because you have to be at the top of your game. You can't just show up to a client call and be like mentally, emotionally checked out. It doesn't work like that. So yeah.
No, no. And then that's doing your
Yeah.
clients a disservice, and that's not fair.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my next question is, I think we can do something fun. So I'm going to start by saying that, so Jen and I were doing some work on one of her, I was helping you with your marketing for one of your programs, which we'll talk about in a little bit, last year. And on one of our calls, because I always like to gather as much information as possible, it helps me with the writing process. It helps me understand your industry, your tools, your gifts, like what it is that you do and why it's helpful. And I remember because the best way that you can explain something is sometimes by like actually using a real life example, right? So you pulled up my chart and Jen looks at my chart and she's like, Lauren, are you moving? And this was back when Alexis and I had been having conversations. We had been having conversations for like a year, and we were like, we don't fit in here anymore. There's something else out there. We were sensing a move, but we didn't know where we were landing yet. So we had talked about a couple different places in Mexico. And then we visited Montreal for the second time. And Alexis, I think, was like, we should just go to Montreal, right? And I don't even think we knew that we were going to Montreal, but at that stage, we were in conversation and it was really giving me a lot of anxiety because I was like, I feel comfortable here. I feel like my best self in Mexico, and I don't want to think about moving because that's scary and big, and I don't think I'm ready on so many different levels. And you said that, and I was like, holy shit. Like, that was just like a really big, I mean, it was so validating, right? Because it was like, okay, so something is shifting. And I remember you saying, like, you're either moving or something in the home is shifting. And it was very clear to me that we were going to be moving, but I was kind of hoping that it was just going to be a shift in the home. Like, maybe we're going to do renovations, but no, there was nothing to be renovated. So, do you want to say something?
Yeah, because I was also gonna say I don't remember because I know when we chatted about this, it was kind of like in intertwined in what you were doing with me, so we didn't
Yeah.
spend a heap of time on it. But I remember going to or saying to you that just so you know, like when it happens, it's gonna happen quickly. And you
Yes.
were like, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And
Yeah.
then I'll let you tell.
Yeah, so then we actually ended up because Alexis and I had been talking about it and like going through it, and it was creating a lot of internal anxiety for me. The idea of moving and then moving back to Canada where everyone was like, it's more expensive here. You have to speak French, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and blah, 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 blah.
Old.
And it's cold. Yeah. And what I know about myself is like those things don't really matter. I always find a way. If like I'm meant to be somewhere, that is where I'm meant to be, and the rest will work itself out, you know? But it's sometimes hard to wrap your head around that. It's sometimes hard to embody that when you have other fears or when things don't always make sense in your mind, right? So we actually ended up doing a reading. Alexis and I did a reading, and that was kind of like a special arrangement for us,
Forgot
right?
about that.
Yeah, you did a reading for us. And so you covered some of Alexis's transits and my transits, and it was super helpful. But yeah, I think my question is, how can someone use astrology to help them live a more aligned life?
Yeah. I also think that this is a good example just to share like how things differ
Mm,
between charts. So both of us are were in a position at that time of experience, and I just shared and I'm just kind of coming to the tail end of it around moving. But the planet, which for me was Pluto, that was going over the same part of my chart as Lauren Ashley. Pluto is so slow for me. For her, it was Uranus, which is why it's a lot quicker. And although they are both subconscious planets that do bring change, Pluto is a very slow process because it has to do with shifting and excavating of the old to make way for the new. The best way that I describe this is like Pluto is like a volcano where it, doesn't erupt right away, but things are happening and then it does erupt. And I just got goosebumps again as I said that. But it does erupt and then the lava comes down and then it's slow and you don't know when it's going to stop. Uranus is like an earthquake. It happens, it is quick, it is impactful, and then it's over. So this is a real life example of how everyone's chart is unique and there are so many layers available to you of granular specific guidance that will help your life that is outside of the your sun sign horoscope in the back of Cosmo if people still read that.
if it still exists.
I don't even
I
know.
don't know.
I don't even know. If anyone was wondering if I'm a millennial, you now know.
Right. Both of us just revealed our age.
So I have a very practical approach to astrology, and I will never live my life through lack through astrology based on if something's coming up challenging or let it dictate my life. My intuition is also always a huge part of it. And astrology is here as a guidance tool. But the thing is that you have to co create with it, right? So even with these eclipses that are happening right now, we are in the eclipse vortex right now. And what I mean by that is we are in the middle between the solar and the lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse is on September 17th, and the solar is coming on October 2nd. And it is this massive time of transformation. When I look back at a lot of the things, like life trajectory changing things, and this was not planned, this was without me realizing, were on eclipses. I moved to New Zealand on an eclipse. I left my corporate career on an eclipse. And this was me also going back and looking at dates. I fell down that rabbit hole and I was like, holy shit. Started my business on an eclipse. There was a significant growth point in my business on an eclipse. Had a relationship end on an eclipse, had one start on an eclipse. So it's not, I think a lot of times people fear, and I did used to be one of these people where were coming and I was like, oh, I'm not ready. What's happening? The change is coming. Like, and the only reason you have something to fear with an eclipse season is if you are trying to force something to stay the same when it has already run its course and you are getting very clear signs that it's time to move on to something different. And as humans, we don't always like that. Pretty much at the front of the line with that one, little stubborn Taurus that I am. But when you lean into the opportunities that you are being given and co create with this energy, the most beautiful, magical things. If someone would have told me, even this time 2 years ago, oh, yeah, like you're going to have a home in New Zealand, you're going to have a home in Canada, you're going to go to Indo on a one-way ticket and figure it out, I'd be like, okay, no, I'm not. I'm not doing that. I want one home. I will have one home and then I will figure everything else out. So it was not part of my plan. But oh my God, is this not like, I say this all the time on my socials, astrology has helped me completely catapult into my dream life that I didn't even know was available to me. Like none of this was part of my plan. None of it. And I still wake up some days and I'm not saying I don't have to navigate adversity because I'm human and I'm here in the trenches with you. And of course I do. But I wake up every day. I think the theme of this podcast is going to be me getting goosebumps as validations. But I wake up every day
Jen
and
gets goosebumps. That'll be the title.
that's the episode. But I wake up every day and I'm like, I love going to work. And if I'm having a bad day, and this has been something that's come through really recently for me, is if I've had a couple bad days and I've had clients in the afternoon, and that's what I'm looking forward to, working. And I'm like, what life is this? What life is this that I just have a one-way ticket to anywhere I want in the world and I can just figure out how it goes because I have location freedom. And my chart was a huge part of me getting to this point, helped me with my business. There are key points in your chart that will show you business cycles, your strengths, where you'll be successful. I have a Cancer midheaven, which has to do with where I'll be successful in work and how and what will make me happy. And that's a huge part of why I didn't like working in corporate because Cancer is nurturing and supportive and creates a safe place for people. And that's counseling. That's not sitting in a bullpen in a high volume sales environment with crappy energy all around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Is it Midhaven or Midheaven? I keep hearing it different ways.
Midhaven. I say
Midhaven.
Midhaven. But I also wonder sometimes I do say things wrong because my astrology teacher is Kiwi, is a New Zealander, and sometimes I hear
Oh,
things in her accent and then I repeat it in a Canadian accent, but I'm not saying it right, if that makes
that's so
sense.
funny. Yeah,
So,
that's
but you
so
can just
funny.
say MC. Let's look at where your MC is.
Mine is in Scorpio.
So, if you want to talk about, she's laughing at my reaction.
I mean, yeah, yeah.
So I feel like there's two ways that Scorpio can go. One is police, firefighter, EMS, anything that is under, I got goosebumps again, anything that is under like high pressure type
Mm,
scenarios. And I laugh because I used my sister's chart as a case study, and she's a police officer in a TAC unit, like a really high stress, high profile job. And I was laughing. I'm like, I could never do what she does. And my teacher's like, respectfully, Jen, we don't want you doing what she does. Like, we don't want you showing up at the crime scene.
you would be like crying your eyes out. Like,
Completely. And then I'd also be like, but wait, who's going to be there? Like, who's going just to prepare to walk into the situation? But for her, it works. So we all have these different strengths in our chart. But the other thing with Scorpio is also the mysticism and the getting to the root cause and digging deep into layers. And from what I know about working with you, Lauren and Ashley, and also just what I see on your socials, like nothing is superficial or fluffy. You're breaking it back, you're peeling it back. Even look at how you've been able to dig deep into the layers and share within your own life.
mhm.
And it works for you. And it doesn't come off as, I mean, let's be honest, or I'll just say from my perspective, I'm not going to put words in anyone else's mouth, but I roll my eyes a lot of times when I see people with business accounts and they're like, to be honest, today was a really hard day and this is why. And I just, because I work with energy, I just know you just ticked a box of needing to post something vulnerable so
Mm,
you can relate to people. And I don't feel that's what you do. Like, I feel like you
yeah.
share with a purpose, not because a business coach told you that you had to have tell people you had a hard day today. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. And it's so interesting because what's coming up for me right now, like I just saw a thread the other day that was like, this is an unpopular opinion and I might get some backlash for this, but you being vulnerable and sharing like anything about how you're struggling is causing money blocks. Like people don't want to pay you essentially when you do that. And I was like, that is so interesting because like I sent an email recently about how I struggled, in August and September, and I usually do every year, which is fine. And like it takes a lot of contemplation before I put something out because I never want to put the wrong message out there. So I do think about it and I do like really sit with it. But you're right. I think it does depend on who it is. If your midheaven or haven is not in that placement, then maybe that's not what you're meant to be sharing. Maybe you're meant to like if it's in Aries, maybe you're meant to be like, I don't know, hyping people up or like motivating people or burning shit to the ground. I don't know.
Or, or with Aries specifically, not so much focusing on the vulnerable part, focusing on the actions that were taken
Mm,
when you were feeling that way to move forward.
yeah.
And that is where you're going to thrive because that's Aries.
Yeah.
It's leadership, it is
Leadership.
forward movement, it is the word I want to use. We'll just stay with leadership and forward movement because I lost my train of thought. But and that will work for Aries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for me, um, I try to share and be as vulnerable as I can, but I definitely have more of a nurturing, gentle approach to it
Yeah.
versus this is what happened and this is what I did and let's go, bitch, we got it. Like that's just it's not like my vibe. But for Aries, it would work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what's so important about getting to know yourself and not succumbing to what everyone's opinions are online, right? Like even me, if I say some sort of business advice online, again, it's not cut and dry. And I honestly hate providing like advice online because it's hard. Like you don't know who's watching. I remember actually someone told me like, hey, what you said about something about how we manifest, I believe that we manifest symptoms and like the physical things that
Yes.
we face are mental, spiritual, emotional. And if we don't address those things, they become physical manifestations. And I remember someone who was in a very difficult place at the time, and they just recently shared this with me. So I didn't know that they were going through this. And, they were like, I felt really hurt by what you said, because what I gathered was that it's all our fault. And I'm like, no, that's not the message that I was trying to give at all. But that's what can happen, right? When you are giving advice. And I mean, I still do, because it's kind of part of what I feel like business is. But I think everything has to be taken so lightly and has to apply to you, right? So, like you said earlier, if it doesn't resonate, if that's not floating your boat, keep moving. Because, yeah, I mean, generalized advice, generalized horoscopes, they can cause more damage than good. And also, I believe sometimes that we need to look at those things. Like, if I'm feeling triggered by that, like, why is that? But
Yep.
anyway, I digress.
I was just gonna say to that point, I feel
Mhm,
like people are only able to respond.
mhm.
I think it just speaks really to a consciousness level. If
Yeah.
you're at a higher consciousness and you're secure in yourself and you're not coming from a victim mentality or looking like from a place of jealousy or judgment, you look at that stuff and you're like, not me. But
Yes.
if you're not there and you are, or even, even it could just be like a moment of you feeling really emotionally charged about something
Yeah.
else. And then you see that and it triggers you and you're like, but yeah, don't stop sharing that stuff
Yeah. Thank
because
you.
it's the same with me. You're never going to please everyone. And as long as
Yeah.
it's coming from an ethical place.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let me recenter. Hold on. We've talked about a lot of different perspectives and different reasons why astrology is such a powerful tool, and the different ways that it can help someone in their life and help them to live more aligned. I'm curious about, because I know for myself, and I know for many other people who I've talked to, they've gone and tried to learn about astrology. I bought that big ass astrology book, and it's
Me too.
overwhelming. It's a lot of
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
So, what like tips or tools do you have for people who want to learn about astrology and they want to use that tool as just a tool for empowerment and awareness and all of that stuff, but they're struggling to understand and use everything that is out there?
What I don't recommend is ChatGPT, just because we've already talked about that. If I could go back and do it differently, because I was that person who bought that big ass book and felt discouraged and overwhelmed and closed it and stepped away from learning for probably a year because I was discouraged and overwhelmed. If I could go back and do it differently, I would have someone who knows what they are doing break down my chart for me, give me a foundation, help me understand. And then from there, you start just chipping away at it and picking small areas of your chart that you want to deep dive into and learn more about. It's like anything else. You wouldn't go to Chapters, or if you're in the States, Barnes and Noble, and buy a book on brain surgery and bring it home and expect that you're going to learn how to be a brain surgeon without any support. A lot of my astrology has been self-taught, but I've also studied formally for 5 years. So, I think it's not trying to jump from the beginning to the end and understanding that there are so many intricate layers. That's probably the number one thing that I hear people come back to me with, especially when I teach, because I teach as well, is that I had no idea that there were so many layers to this. So if anyone is wanting to learn, I do have a 10-week course called Applied Astrology that I have made very easy to understand in bite-sized pieces because I was the person who was overwhelmed. Fun and easy, I will say, because I'm part of it and I'm fun, so obviously. But for the first 3 listeners that come to me from this podcast that say that they are interested and apply for Applied Astrology, which you can apply for on my website, and I'm pretty sure Lauren Ashley will drop it in the show notes too.
Yep.
I will give the first 3 people from this podcast and just tell me you heard about it on the podcast a discount. to
Mm.
enroll in the course.
That's
So,
amazing. And I worked with you to build out all of that, right? So I got to hear about when I say all of that, the marketing, the sales page. We worked on that together, and I've seen a lot of and heard a lot about a lot of the case studies and the results that people get from learning about astrology and just using that tool in their lives. And one of the biggest things that I think I saw over and over again from your testimonials is that you do make it easy to understand. So if anyone listening would like to empower themselves with the tool of astrology, then this would be a great option to start to learn it. And I honestly think it's a very affordable option. So, yeah. So I will leave that in the show notes. Something that actually I was thinking of earlier that I forgot to mention that I just want to leave listeners with is there's something that we included on the sales page for applied astrology, and it's that I can't remember. You're going to remember the words better because they're your words, but it's something about you can either be dragged.
oh, release or be dragged.
Yeah. And that's something that you say a lot too, right? That, the planets are kind of directing, I guess, our lives in certain ways. And you can either surrender to that, let go of control, and kind of go with the flow there, or you can be dragged through the mud and try to force your your way through life.
And this is because I have been dragged more times than I would like to admit.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I often do things the hard way, and I I do think this stems from being a Taurus and having a predominantly Taurus and fixed chart where I will dig my little hooves in. I do
Mm-hmm.
not want change. Like the pasture that I'm in could be on fire as a little bull, and I can see one beside me that's green, and there's other bulls there, and they're having a party, and I'm like, never been there before. I know this fire. I'm staying here. And because I know some of the lowest moments in my life were self-conflicted because of
Mm-hmm.
things like this, I want to help other people realize that they don't have to feel that way and they don't have to live that way, and life doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something that I'm really passionate about. So,
Yeah, no, I love that because I'm all about that as well. Like I think I've said it so many times, but society teaches us to be a certain way. And I think maybe that works for some people. I don't know, but it doesn't work for me. It just doesn't. I used to be a planner. I talk about this story all the time, how I had a 5-year plan on a sticky note. And my colleague was like, "That's great, Lauren. God doesn't care about your plans." And that friend turned into one of my clients and colleagues now, which is really cool. But um, yeah, it's so true, that I think as humans, we come here to learn and to experience life. And sometimes on the outside, it looks like life can be pretty cut and dry and that we can make plans and set goals and achieve them. And it should go according to plan. But I think there's something that so many like teachers in the world, so many business mentors, so many people just miss out on. And that is the mystery of life that we can never fully even understand or grasp. And tools like astrology, I think, can make it easier to go with those ebbs and flows and to just kind of lean into that mystery. You know what I mean?
I do. I do. And I think that it's okay to have a plan, but
Mm-hmm.
also realize that there could also be a higher plan
Yeah.
and be open to that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say make a plan, but be open for it to, change. You got to be flexible enough to kind of
Exactly.
move with the flow of life and go with what's coming up. So, yeah, I loved this conversation. Thank you so much for coming and sharing about astrology with us. I really appreciate it. I'm going to link your socials below and then the link to applied astrology. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience with before we sign off?
I am going to leave you with something that you may have heard me say before is that the planets do not lie. And if you are looking for some type of support that has, in my experience, an unparalleled level of intricate accuracy than anything else, start working with your birth chart.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. If you like what you heard, I would love it if you left a review. If you like my vibe, come and hang with me in my Facebook or Telegram group. I'll drop the link to my email list below where you can get instant access. Make sure you check the show notes for any other links that I mentioned today. And until next time, I'm sending you waves of abundance.